Okay, last paper, last but not least. Two authors presented this paper, Luca Cossettini and Angelo Orcalli, and Luca will present the paper. The title is Writing Forms and Model in Mixed Spectral Music, Jour, Contre-jour by Gerard Grisey. Please, Luca, it's up to you.
Thank you, Alain. First of all, I have to put forward a lexical distinction I use in my paper to avoid confusion. I will speak about philology only when I deal with text criticism, while I use the expression source criticism in a more extended meaning, which is to say, source criticism, I use this word for a text, but also for audio recording and other kind of traces the composer left us. So, although there are other compositions by Gerard Grisey that use electronic means, Jour Contre-jour is the only work for which he used the magnetic tape, both for composing and fixing a musical idea, along with the traditional notation on score. Jour Contre-jour was conceived and composed between 1978 and 1981, and it was derived from a previous work, Sortie vers la lumière du jour, through minor changes in the structure and a revision of the orchestration, also with addition of the magnetic tape. As a mixed work, it is therefore fixed on a heterogeneous document, scores and audio documents. During the time, these sources had different destinies, a different transmission that compels us to reconstruct their history and relationship through the different copies we have today. Especially for audio sources, where we can notice a lot of differences among the tapes, we need to certify the authenticity of the sources with the tools of source criticism. The score of Jour Contre-jour was published by Casa Ricordi in 1980. The electronic part that must be used for live performances was created between 1980 and 1981 in the electronic music studio of the Technische Universität in Berlin and fixed on different carriers. In Berlin, we can find different sources. For example, we have a 1-inch 4-track magnetic tape, we have a half-inch 4-track magnetic tape, some ADAT copies, and a 1-inch 8 tracks preliminary tape. Then we can find other tapes at the Archivio Ricordi in Milan, and they were used for copyright and renting purposes. For example, we have two half-inch 4-track magnetic tapes, one ADAT, and a 1/4-inch monotape with sync signals that can be used for rehearsal. Furthermore, the Paul-Sacher Stiftung in Basel preserved a lot of sketches and preliminary scores, both for Jour Contre-jour and Sortie vers la lumière du jour. So, we have a lot of sources that can help us both for authenticity certification and for a genetic criticism aimed at finding the compositional model that lies under the creation of Jour Contre-jour. Unfortunately, we won't have time today for a complete critical reconstruction of the transmission process, nor to analyze the relationship between Jour Contre-jour and Sortie vers la lumière du jour. So, I ask you to believe me if I tell you that source comparison tells us that more authoritative sources are the published score for the instrumental part and the 1-inch 4-track tape of Berlin for the electronic part. But even if we can call them good sources, they present a few little problems that we will see later on. So, we can move directly to the Basel sketches and see how they can be used for the analysis of the work. As you probably know, Jour Contre-jour is based on a metaphor, the path of the sun through the sky and the different shadows projected by an obelisk during the day. Therefore, we have a process divided in two big parts, morning and afternoon. The morning is divided into 10 subsections, then we have the noon and an afternoon divided in 9 sections plus a final fermata. Here you can see a sketch preserved at the Paul-Sacher Stiftung in Basel. Of course, this is not Grisey calligraphy, but it's mine. As you know, in Basel you cannot make photocopies, take pictures, and something else. So I present it like this because you can see the graphical place of the graphical writing of Grisey. So, if you have the morning, 10 section, and here they have the afternoon, and the process is therefore asymmetric. The duration in the morning are calculated with an harmonic function, this one, and the ones in the afternoon with a distorted function. You see, 266 over 2 plus 8 of 9 times n, which is to say we have a perfect octave on the time and a distorted harmonic following in time, I mean. Each subsection is then divided in two parts that overlap. Part A is played by the harmonic is played by the harmonic instrument. Part B is played by instrument with noisy techniques and by the tape that contains noise and frequencies generated by additive and subtractive synthesis, a recorded flute, and all modified by a ring modulator. In the morning, part B is fixed at 12 seconds, while part A decreases in duration. At noon, part A and part B are equal, and in the afternoon, part A is fixed at 13 seconds, while part B increases in duration. The harmonic structure of the work is derived by the harmonic spectrum of a law G. With the exception of the noon section, the spectrum follows a distortion calculated by increasing or decreasing the interval of the partial sound. We can find this distortion in a sketch here. This sound derived from the distorted G are called generator sound, and then we have what Grisey himself calls added sounds, and the other sound of the score are calculated by sum and subtraction between different generators and added sound. The metaphor is clear. In the morning, the sound projects a distorted light that becomes inharmonic at noon and then distorted again in the afternoon. Here you can see the frequencies of each sound, and here are the intervals used. The smallest interval used is 1/8 of tone. It is very interesting to notice that the same spectrum generates the harmonic material both for part A and part B, so both for instrumental part and electronic part. The duration of, here we go, yes, of each note is calculated by simple proportion, taking into account the duration of each subsection. We can see a couple of them as we find them in the sketches by Grisey. For the instrumental part of each subsection, we can then notice that Grisey approximated this value with the precision of an irregular group of 10 notes at 60 BPM. For the electronic part, a great help comes from a series of sketches where Grisey writes down the timing of each event along with the frequency of sounds on tape. You can see the timing and the frequency of the sounds on tape. Starting from these sketches, we can also put forward some consideration on the different approximation Grisey uses for the instrumental notation and the project for the realization of the tape. As we saw, in the score, Grisey approximates the duration with the precision of an irregular group of 10 notes at a metronome of 60 BPM, which is to say 1/10 of a second. Here, in the sketches of the tape, he writes the timing with 2 decimal places, so we have a more precise writing. We can also find differences in the notation of the pitch. Here we go. Is it? Okay. If for the score part he uses a resolution of 1/8 of tone for the acoustical instrument, and it was more approximated to half a tone, of course, for the electronic organ part. Here in the tape he uses 1/6 of tone instead of 1/8 of tone. Here in yellow you can see the different notes. It becomes clear that the model he has in mind is transcribed differently according to the different acoustical and technological instruments that would have read and played the part. But of course, this is not the tape. These are just preliminary sketches for its realization. If we move to the tape, also the good one from Berlin, and we compare its content with the sketches, we find a lot of difference both in duration and pitch. The realization of the tape necessarily passes through what we can call a laboratorial performance, which is to say that the composer or the technician must play the electronic instruments. Are they a synthesizer or an effect? The flutist, because there is a flute inserted also in the tape, must play his instrument with the precision he can achieve. Filters have a resolution in time and in frequency. And then the recorded tracks must be cut, mixed, etc. And this is not far from any other musical performance here realized through the electronic equipment. For example, here we go. Here you can see that Grisey writes down the parameters of the ring modulator for calculating the frequency. Oh, I think you don't see anything. Okay, believe me, these are the parameters for the ring modulator. Here at the top, you can find the approximation on the in the A part, in the music notation part, and here you can see every parameter you use for controlling the electronic equipment that create the electronic part. So here we have the frequency, here we have the times, and here it writes down the noisy instrument that will play along with the tape. A confirmation of this laboratorial praxis is given also by a document preserved at the Technische Universität in Berlin. This is a kind of score written by the technician Volkmar along with Grisey, and here you can find the operation needed to play the 8-track tape to create the 4-track mixdown. Of course, you have to know the system, the technological system that Volkmar used for creating this mixdown. Because, for example, this 12 means 0 dB, which is the no amplification of the tape, of the track. This 15 means 3 dB amplification, and so on. You can find other instructions, such as take this cable and put this cable in another channel. These are amplitude signs and so on. So this is a kind of practical score for the realization of the tape. And each time Volkmar had to create a tape for a concert, for a performance, created a new one for starting from the 8-track preliminary tape. This is easy to understand why, because if I make a lot of copies of analogical tape, I increase the level of noise. So I decrease the signal-to-noise ratio. So it's better to take the preliminary tapes again and do the mix down again. This practical, performative aspect is the cornerstone of a wider analytical problem we have to face when we analyze electronic music on tape. This kind of technological transcription, to use the word of Busoni, embeds the model in the material, creating a shift from the world of the text to the world of the act. Also assuming for a while that we can use software tools to determine the pitch and the duration of the sound event of the tape of the sound event of the tape with a sufficient degree of approximation, the data I will get from this analysis will be very distant from the model the composer had in mind, if he had one. Why do I say also assuming for a while that we can? Because you know that we have an indeterminacy in time or in frequency when we do sonogram on FFT analysis. And this indeterminance is derived, related to the width of the window I use for the analysis. For example, in the sketches, I have a resolution of 0.01 Hz. What resolution can I achieve with a sonogram analysis? Furthermore, when we deal with analogical means, we always have to keep in mind that this equipment is not perfect, but is characterized by tolerance limits. Just to take one, the adjustment of the speed of a tape has a tolerance of 0.2%, which is to say that in a work that lasts 20 minutes, as last jour contre jour, a difference in the duration up to 2.4 seconds has to be considered perfectly normal. And it's quite a lot compared to the approximation we find in the sketches. So, due to the presence of a praxis, due to the tolerances, due to the thermical noise we insert in each recording process, in an analogical domain of course, we can consider that the magnetic tape is just one of the possible outputs of a non-deterministic process. So, in this scenario, you understand that it will be very difficult to reach back to the model, starting from the tape alone. As for jour contre jour, I would never have noticed the use of 1/6 of tone just analyzing the tape. That, by the way, presents discrepancy up to 100 Hz in the frequency and 2 seconds in the duration. So we can say that in jour contre jour, both instrumental and electronic part are derived from a common model. This model is then transcribed by Grisey in different ways on the music notation and on the tape according to the different means he had to deal with. While on the instrumental part we have a single transcription from the model to the score, in the electronic part on tape we have at least 3 steps, from the model to the project to what we can call a studio performance and its fixation tape. Score and tape are therefore not homogeneous. They concern different compositional and writing paradigms and habits. We can say that for the score, we're still in the world of a text, in the world of philology, where I can discern what is correct and what is wrong according to a source comparison and to an overhanging model. For example, I can say that there is a wrong transcription here at noon, an error. Exactly here. Because this spectrum is not harmonic as it should, according obviously to the model, a comparison with other sources confirms this hypothesis. For example, this is a score of Sortie vers le milieu du jour, which is identical in this part. And we can see here, this part, you see the reorchestration. Here we have these notes at the second violin, while here we have them at the viola. So here we go. And we can see that Grisey, or the copyist, forgot a ledger line. So, but we can't do the same things for tape. Where errors in the tape blur in the praxis, in the technological performance, and in the mechanical tolerance of the machines we use. Here, the opposition shifts from correct versus wrong to controlled versus not controlled, which is to say, were the recording machine perfectly calibrated? Is the flute perfectly tuned on the 1/8 of tone? Is the mix correct? And so on. We are no longer in the world of philology because we cannot abstract a text that we can check and, if needed, correct. For example, by the comparisons of the sources, we can detect some uncontrolled parts on the tape too. in the first section, for example, we can measure a shift of 2 seconds in the sequence of the events. And this is not a problem of tolerances. It's just a problem of uncontrolled mix down from the original 8-track material. Of course, this is outside the tolerance limits, and we can call them uncontrolled. But how do we correct this problem? The sound is already there. The mix is already there, fixed on tape. If you want to correct it, we have to go back to the preliminary material, if we have them, and do the technological performance again. Yes. According to the sketches and the tape performance score. In this way, we go back to a source criticism problem. We have to study all the sources we have, find the model, but above all, we must be sure that we have enough material, especially audio material, to do such a reconstruction. And this is a very rare condition. And even if we manage to do such an operation, it will be just another transcription of the score, another passage, a new version of the word. Legitimate, but a new one. So, it becomes clear that when we analyze mixed music with tape, the tape alone is not sufficient, because it is very difficult, if not impossible from a Platonic point of view, to abstract a text from an act. We need to reach back to the model, if exists, by comparison of the sketches, and then we have to study how this model was embedded on the different writing forms, scores and tape, through different writing technologies that we must know and reconstruct from an historical-critical point of view. So no longer a synchronic analysis of an object, but the diachronic and dialectic reconstruction of a process. Thus, as the classical scholars went to the monastery and studied the writing system of the copyist, we must go down to the laboratories and investigate the technological audio systems and the laboratorial praxis they created. This is, in my opinion, the great challenge that mixed music with tape gives us. And I think that a new genetic criticism that always keeps in mind the different production system can help us in this task. Thank you.
Okay, we have come to, in fact, we have realized kind of cycle or loop, since we are back to yesterday opening questions, and so we have time for questions about all these issues, and please.
Thank you very much. I found that really very fascinating. But I can't say anything else, but I'm in mind that if the perspective on the Mona Lisa wasn't quite right, you wouldn't correct it. In other words, for me, the marvellous thing is that mistakes are there. They are traces of a real act, of a real historical moment, when things were analogue, when tapes did not run at the, quotes, exact speed. So that Stockhausen has to apologise in the CD of Contactor, but in fact it's 2 seconds shorter than the LP version. This is a wonderful illustration of that. I wouldn't want to correct it, but knowledge of it is golden.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a terminological remark. I agree with you when you talk about source criticism. It is different from philology. Okay. But we have also to admit that the word philologie in French or philologia in Italian is translated in English by source criticism. Okay. Having said that...
That's why I make a lexical distinction at the beginning of my speech.
Yeah, having said that, many authors demonstrate today that in 20th century music we assist to a multiplication of sources, and you are right in that. Sources are heterogeneous, especially in electroacoustic music. we have paper sources, audio, video, digital sources, sketches, softwares, and so on and so on. So maybe we should consider this seriously from a terminological point of view. Just we could just say source criticism in English, and in French critique de source,
Oui.
and in Italian critica delle fonti.
Sì.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but there are not two different things.
Oh no.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't think so. So it's a kind of it's a difficult question. I think it deals with the problem of the model and how the model comes down to the material. It's a transcription problem, you know. On the world of text, I can abstract a model. In the world of text, there is a difference between the paper and what is written on paper. It don't mind if this is Times New Roman or Arial or whatever. And I consider this one the world of the text, where I can abstract something from something else. When you deal, especially with, I know, I'm talking about electronic music on tape. So. I have different ideas for computer music and other kind of experiences, such as live coding or something. This is only on Grisey. How can I discern in a magnetic tape what is the figure and what is the background? So, and this problem has to do also with the problem of audio restoration. When I have not text, non-text, recording non-text, and I have to know what to remove. I have to make a separation between a text or a non-text, you know. And if I have a musical score, I can see where the error is. If I have a model behind it, as I show you, I can see, okay, this is wrong. This is a wrong copying process. But when I have audio signal, where noise and intended signal are mixed together, how can I separate it? Then I cannot deconvolute them. And especially for electronic music, where noisy signals, noisy sounds are used for musical composition, one above all Scambi by Pusser. Where is the noise and where is the intended signal in Scambi by Pusser? Or when Vittorio Gelmetti uses clicks and disturbance for creating music, for creating electronic music, where is the noise? Where is the error? Or, moreover, in Y entonces comprendió by Luigi Nono, at the end there is the recording of a disc with Fidel Castro reading the letter by Che Guevara, and there you can find all the clicks and the noise of the disc, but they are there. They're part of a composition. So there is no straight line between what is true and what is false, what is correct and what is not correct. While in the textual world, I can discern what is correct and what is not correct by the abstraction of the model or by the source comparison with the tools of textual philology. But I cannot use the tools of textual philology as they are for determining if this noise that Nono uses for composition is derived from an idea or is an uncontrolled noise. So we shift to the world of controlled and uncontrolled signal. And how do I investigate this control? Only by knowing the technological system that created this document I have in mind. Every machine has its tolerances, you know. Every machine, every studio has its own practice. For example, if I take a tape recorded with a machine calibrated with a low fluxivity calibration tape, and I put this one on a machine with a calibrated with a high fluxivity calibration tape, I will have a lot of distortion. And this is not a problem, this is not an error. It's just a misunderstanding of the system. I did not create a synchronization something like that, between the system that creates the document and the system I used to read it. But it's not the word of error or not error. Because I cannot see the content of a tape just by looking at it. I have to use an electronic system. I have to use a reading system. I have to calibrate. Sorry, I'm...
Oh, it's okay. Next question by Makis.
Maybe it won't be the good question to finish symposium. Maybe it will need another symposium. My question. So it's the discussion I have also last year with Angelo Orcalli about the balance when we are speaking about music, aesthetics, and especially music, who is not for the moment well known by the big public. It's not like maybe Luigi Nono, Grisey. Jour Contre-jour is not very often performed. So the question is the balance that we have to keep in mind that there is something called a work of art, a piece of art, with its aesthetic position very strong, where you cannot speak about errors, etc. And the way that you are dealing, which is a kind of dissolution of the work, because you are going so far that. Where is the music? Where is the work? So, if you don't want to answer, please.
No, okay, the same ontological question as yesterday. Exactly. Okay, where is the work? I presented a lucky case. As jour contre jour is we have a model, and we can see how this model is. Embedded in different writing forms. And so we can say there is a work, or there is an idea. Maybe we cannot grasp it perfectly, but we say that there is one. But when we deal, for example, with Bruno Maderna, I used to work on Invenzione su una voce by Bruno Maderna, we do not have two tapes that contains the same things. Because Maderna went to a concert, for the first time he used tape and live voice, then he came back to the studio and cut off the tape and changes things. And so, but this is a well-known problem of Desert by Edgar Varese. And so I think that the work is no longer a static object. But the work is ever-changing process, and we're lucky. We're more lucky because we deal with tapes, which are fixed photographies or something like images, images of something, sound images of something fixed on a document. But for example, how can I study live coding? What is fixed in the practice of live coding? Maybe some procedures, but the composer, performer can change it according to the room, according to the audience, according to everything. So I think that the idea of work tends to blur in the praxis, in the life of music, in the production, but also in the performance of music. It's just a case that the tape obliged the composer to fix something on tape. If you think about Maderna, or if you think about Varese, where is the work? The work is the process. The work is everything. And maybe you can use the tools of variant studies, so the study of the versions and so.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Luca. Thank you. And thank you, all of you, for attending the conference.